Subscribe if you believe in love that sneaks up on you. I've been living with this secret for 8 months now, and it's slowly eating me alive. Every time Jacob and I hang out, every casual touch, every shared laugh, I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope between friendship and something I can never have. The worst part isn't even the wanting. It's the constant performance, the exhausting act of being just his friend when every fiber of my being screams that I want more. It started innocently enough, the way these things always do. Jacob would make offhand comments about me being secretive, joking that I must have some mysterious love interest I was hiding from him. "Come on, Donald," he'd say with that crooked smile that makes my chest tight. "You've been acting weird lately. There's definitely someone." And I'd laugh it off, deflect with some joke about being too busy with work, all while my heart hammered against my ribs because he was right. There was someone. Him. The teasing became a regular thing, woven into our conversations like a running joke that only tortured me. Jacob would bring it up during our weekly coffee runs, during late-night phone calls, even in group settings where I'd have to maintain my composure while he speculated about my non-existent dating life. "I bet it's someone from your office," he'd muse, leaning back in his chair with that thoughtful expression that made me want to memorize every line of his face. "Or maybe someone you met at that conference last month." Each guess felt like a small knife twist, not because he was wrong, but because he was so determined to figure out who had captured my attention. The irony was suffocating. Here was the person I was desperately in love with, actively trying to solve the mystery of my feelings while being completely oblivious to the fact that he was the answer. I started to wonder if this was some kind of cosmic joke, if the universe had specifically designed this torture just for me. The worst moments were when he'd get serious about it, when the playful teasing would shift into genuine concern. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" he'd say, his voice soft and earnest, those green eyes searching my face for clues. "I just want you to be happy, Donald. Whoever this person is, they're lucky to have caught your attention." And I'd have to sit there, nodding and smiling, while internally screaming that the person who could make me happiest was sitting right across from me, completely out of reach. I started pulling back without meaning to, creating small distances to protect myself from the constant ache of wanting what I couldn't have. I'd decline some of our usual hangouts, keep conversations a little shorter, avoid the kind of intimate moments that made my feelings harder to hide. But Jacob noticed, of course he did. He always noticed everything about me, which was part of what made this whole situation so beautifully tragic. "You're being weird again," he said last week, catching my arm as I tried to leave early from our usual Thursday night movie marathon. "And don't try to tell me it's work stress. I know you better than that." The concern in his voice almost broke my resolve entirely. I wanted to tell him everything right then, to lay my heart bare and deal with whatever consequences came after. But the fear of losing him, of ruining the one relationship that meant everything to me, kept the words locked in my throat. So I continue this exhausting dance, pretending to be just his friend while dying a little more each day. The secret feels like it's growing heavier, more impossible to carry, and I'm starting to wonder how much longer I can keep this up before something gives way entirely. The next morning brought another text from Jacob, as predictable as sunrise. "Coffee at Romano's? I need my Donald fix before this Monday destroys my soul." I stared at the message for a full minute, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed at me to make an excuse, to create more distance between us, but the thought of disappointing him felt worse than the torture of pretending everything was normal. Subscribe if you believe in love that sneaks up on you. Romano's had become our sanctuary over the past 3 years, a small corner cafe where we dissected everything from career anxieties to family drama. The owner, Mrs. Romano, always saved us the table by the window, the one with the wobbly leg that Jacob would fix with folded napkins while I ordered our usual drinks. Today felt different, though, charged with the weight of everything I couldn't say. Jacob was already there when I arrived, his dark hair catching the morning light as he scrolled through his phone. He looked up as I approached, and that familiar smile spread across his face, the one that made my chest tighten with longing and regret in equal measure. "There's my mysterious friend," he said, standing to pull me into one of his casual hugs that lasted just a beat too long to be entirely platonic. "I'm not mysterious," I protested, settling into my chair as he flagged down the waitress. "I'm just private. Private about your love life, you mean?" His eyes sparkled with that mischievous curiosity that had been driving me crazy for weeks. Come on, Donald. We've been friends since sophomore year. I've seen you through your terrible poetry phase and that regrettable attempt at growing a mustache. Why are you suddenly so secretive about whoever's got you all twisted up? The waitress appeared with our drinks, black coffee for him, caramel latte for me, and I used the interruption to gather my thoughts. How could I explain that the reason I couldn't talk about my crush was because he was sitting right across from me, completely oblivious to the way my heart hammered every time he leaned forward like this? Maybe there's nothing to tell, I said, wrapping my hands around my mug for warmth and stability. Jacob's laugh was rich and knowing. Right. And I'm the Pope. Donald, I've watched you check your phone approximately 47 times in the last hour. You get this look on your face when you think no one's watching, like you're somewhere else entirely. And don't even get me started on how you've been avoiding our usual hangouts. The accuracy of his observations sent a chill down my spine. If Jacob could read me this easily, how long before he connected the dots? How long before he realized that the mysterious crush he was so curious about was him? I just don't want to jinx anything, I said, which was true in the most painful way possible. Some things are too fragile to talk about. Something shifted in Jacob's expression then, a flicker of something I couldn't quite identify. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made me want to hide. Fragile how? Like, this person doesn't know how you feel, or they do know and it's complicated. The question hit too close to home. I took a long sip of my latte, buying time, but Jacob's gaze never wavered. There was something almost hungry in the way he waited for my answer, as if my response mattered more than casual curiosity would warrant. Both, I guess, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. It's someone I can't afford to lose. Jacob's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. Someone you can't afford to lose, he repeated slowly, as if testing the words. Like, someone already in your life? The air between us seemed to thicken. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and watched as something complicated crossed Jacob's features. For a moment, neither of us spoke, and I became acutely aware of every sound in the cafe. The hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of other conversations, the rapid beating of my own heart. That's tough, Jacob said finally, his voice softer than before. Being in love with someone you're afraid to lose. It's like being trapped between wanting everything and risking nothing. The way he said it, with such understanding and empathy, made me wonder if he was speaking from experience. Had Jacob been in this position before? Was he in it now? The thought sent a jolt of something. Hope, fear, jealousy, through my system. Yeah, I managed. It's exactly like that. Jacob reached across the table then, his fingers brushing mine as he touched my hand. The contact was brief, meant to be comforting, but it sent electricity shooting up my arm. For what it's worth, I think anyone would be lucky to have you care about them like that, even if they don't realize it yet. The kindness in his voice, the gentle way he was trying to comfort me about feelings he didn't know were directed at him, was almost unbearable. I pulled my hand back, needing the distance to think clearly. Thanks, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That means a lot. Jacob smiled, but there was something different about it now, less teasing, more thoughtful. You know I'm here for you, right? Whatever happens with this mystery person, you've got me in your corner. The irony was so sharp it physically hurt. Here was Jacob, promising to support me through my heartbreak over him, completely unaware that he held the power to either heal or destroy me with a single word. The irony was so sharp it physically hurt. Here was Jacob, promising to support me through my heartbreak over him, completely unaware that he held the power to either heal or destroy me with a single word. Subscribe if you believe in love that sneaks up on you. Over the next few weeks, Jacob's curiosity about my mysterious crush became relentless. What started as casual teasing evolved into something more persistent, more probing. He'd bring it up during our Thursday night movie marathons, casually dropping questions between scenes. So have you talked to them lately? He'd ask, his eyes never leaving the screen but his voice carrying a weight that made my chest tighten. Or during our weekend hikes, when we'd pause to catch our breath at scenic overlooks, he'd wonder aloud if I'd made any progress with the situation. Each question felt like a small knife twist, not because Jacob was being cruel. He wasn't, but because his genuine concern for my happiness made everything infinitely worse. He wanted me to be happy, wanted me to find love, and he was actively encouraging me to pursue someone who would never exist because the someone was him. The worst part was how invested he seemed in the outcome. When I'd deflect or change the subject, I'd catch him watching me with this expression I couldn't quite read, something between concern and frustration, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that kept shifting pieces. Sometimes I wondered if he was picking up on the inconsistencies in my story, the way I never had concrete details about this supposed crush, never mentioned actual conversations or interactions. "You're being awfully secretive about this person," he said one evening as we sat on his couch, Chinese takeout containers scattered across the coffee table. "Are they someone I know?" My chopsticks froze halfway to my mouth. "Why would you think that?" "Just the way you act when I ask about them. Like you're afraid I'll figure out who it is." He turned to face me fully, tucking one leg under himself. "Is it someone from work? From the gym? That guy Marcus you mentioned from your book club?" The rapid-fire questions made my heart race. Jacob was methodical when he wanted to be, and right now he was treating my love life like a case to be solved. I could see the wheels turning in his head, cataloging every person I'd mentioned in recent months, every interaction I'd described. "It's not Marcus," I said quickly, then immediately regretted it. Now he knew it was someone specific enough to rule out. "Okay, not Marcus." Jacob's eyes lit up with the thrill of the hunt. "What about that barista at the coffee shop you like? The one with the tattoos?" "Jacob, please." I set down my chopsticks, my appetite completely gone. "Can we not do this right now?" But he was like a dog with a bone now, energized by my obvious discomfort. "You're getting all weird again. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You get this look on your face whenever I bring this up, like you're in physical pain or something." If only he knew how accurate that assessment was. "Maybe because it's complicated," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Maybe because talking about it makes it harder to deal with." "But that's exactly why you should talk about it," Jacob insisted, scooting closer on the couch. "Keeping it all bottled up is just making you miserable." "I can see it, Dawn. You've been different lately, more distant, more in your head. It's like you're carrying this weight around all the time." He wasn't wrong. The constant vigilance required to hide my feelings was exhausting. Every casual touch, every shared laugh, every moment of easy intimacy between us had to be carefully monitored and contained. I found myself analyzing every word before I spoke, every gesture before I made it, terrified that I'd give myself away. What if talking about it makes things worse? I asked quietly. How could it make things worse? What if they don't feel the same way? What if telling them ruins everything? Jacob's expression softened, and he reached over to squeeze my shoulder. The touch sent electricity through me, and I had to fight not to lean into it. "Dawn, you can't live your life afraid of what might happen. Yeah, there's a risk, but there's also a chance they feel the same way. And if they don't, then at least you'll know. And you can start moving forward instead of being stuck in this limbo." His thumb traced a small circle on my shoulder before he pulled his hand away. "Besides, anyone would be lucky to have you. If they can't see that, they're an idiot." The compliment hit me like a physical blow. Here was Jacob, telling me I was worth loving, that anyone would be lucky to have me, while I sat there drowning in feelings for him that I couldn't express. The cognitive dissonance was almost unbearable. "You really think I should tell them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think you should stop torturing yourself." Jacob's voice was gentle but firm. "Whatever's going on in your head, whatever worst-case scenario you're imagining, it can't be worse than what you're doing to yourself right now." I stared at him, memorizing the concern in his eyes, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the slight stubble along his jaw. He was so close I could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. For a moment, I let myself imagine what it would be like to close the distance between us, to finally stop pretending. "What if it changes everything?" I asked. "Maybe it needs to change," he said softly. "Maybe whatever you have now isn't enough anymore." The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't sure either of us fully understood. Jacob was still looking at me with that intense, searching expression, like he was trying to read something written in a language he didn't quite know. "I should go," I said suddenly, standing up so quickly I nearly knocked over my water glass. "Dawn, wait. I just need to think about what you said." I was already reaching for my jacket, desperate to escape before I did something stupid. "Thanks for dinner. And for listening." Jacob stood too, following me to the door. "Are you okay?" You seem. I'm fine. I lied, not trusting myself to look at him. I'll call you tomorrow. But as I drove home, Jacob's words echoed in my head. Maybe whatever you have now isn't enough anymore. He was right, of course. The friendship that had once been enough was now a source of constant pain, a reminder of everything I wanted but couldn't have. And his persistent questions about my crush were becoming harder to deflect, his curiosity more intense with each passing day. I was running out of ways to hide, and the weight of the secret was becoming unbearable. Something had to give, and I was terrified of what that might mean for both of us. The next few days passed in a blur of avoidance and anxiety. I found myself making excuses to skip our usual hangouts, claiming work deadlines and family obligations that didn't exist. But Jacob wasn't easily deterred. His texts became more frequent, his invitations more persistent, and I could sense his growing concern beneath the casual tone of his messages. "You've been MIA lately," he said when he finally cornered me at our favorite coffee shop on Thursday afternoon. I'd agreed to meet him only because refusing again would have raised too many questions. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile, wrapping my hands around my coffee cup to stop them from shaking. "Just busy, you know how it is." Jacob studied my face with those perceptive eyes that had always seen too much. "Is this about your crush situation? Because you've been weird ever since we talked about it the other day." My stomach dropped. Of course he'd connected the dots. Jacob had always been too observant for his own good, and apparently for mine too. "It's not about that." I lied, but even I could hear how unconvincing I sounded. "Come on, Donald." He leaned forward, his expression softening with genuine concern. "Talk to me. What's going on with this guy? Did something happen?" The irony was suffocating. Here was Jacob, the source of all my turmoil, trying to comfort me about the very feelings he was unknowingly inspiring. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Instead, I just shook my head, unable to trust my voice. "You know what I think?" Jacob continued, his tone becoming more animated. "I think you're overthinking this whole thing. Maybe you should just tell him how you feel. What's the worst that could happen?" "The worst that could happen? I could lose my best friend. I could destroy the most important relationship in my life. I could watch the easy comfort between us crumble into awkwardness and regret." But I couldn't say any of that without revealing everything. "It's complicated," I managed to say. "How complicated can it be?" Jacob's voice carried a hint of frustration now. "You like him, right? And you think there might be something there? So why are you torturing yourself like this?" "Because he's you," I wanted to scream. "Because every time you touch my arm or smile at me in that particular way, I convince myself that maybe you feel something too. Because I'm terrified that I'm reading signals that don't exist, and even more terrified that I'm not." "You don't understand," I said instead, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then help me understand." Jacob's hand moved across the table, his fingers almost touching mine. "You're my best friend, Donald. I hate seeing you like this. Just tell me what's going on." The concern in his voice was genuine, and it made everything worse. How could I explain that his kindness was part of what made this so impossible? That every gesture of friendship felt like a cruel reminder of what I couldn't have. "Why do you care so much?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, sharper than I'd intended. Jacob blinked, clearly taken aback by my tone. "What do you mean?" "About my crush. About who it is." I felt something reckless building inside me, months of suppressed emotion threatening to spill over. "You've been asking about it constantly. Why does it matter so much to you?" For a moment, Jacob just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then he sat back in his chair, his hand retreating from the table. I care about you. I want you to be happy. That's it." I pressed, unable to stop myself now. "You just want me to be happy?" "Of course that's it." But something in his voice had changed, a slight defensiveness that hadn't been there before. "Why are you asking me this?" I took a deep breath, knowing I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. "Does it bother you? The idea that I might have feelings for someone?" The question hung in the air between us like a live wire. Jacob's face went completely still, and for a long moment, the only sound was the ambient chatter of the coffee shop around us. I watched as something shifted in his expression, a flicker of recognition or fear or something else I couldn't quite identify. He started, then stopped. His eyes darted away from mine, focusing on something over my shoulder. "I don't know what you're asking." But his voice was different now, quieter, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. The easy confidence that usually defined Jacob had evaporated, replaced by something vulnerable and uncertain. "I think you do," I said softly. Jacob's gaze snapped back to mine, and for a moment, I saw something raw and unguarded in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition, or both. "Donald," he said, but the word came out as barely a whisper. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications neither of us seemed ready to voice. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, could see the way Jacob's hands had clenched into fists on the table. Everything felt suspended, like we were balanced on the edge of a cliff and one wrong word would send us tumbling. "You've been asking about my crush for weeks," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "Every conversation, every text. You want to know who it is, where I met him, what he's like. And now you're telling me I should just confess my feelings." I paused, watching his face. "So I'm asking you again. Does it bother you that I might have feelings for someone?" Jacob opened his mouth, then closed it again. His usual eloquence had completely deserted him, and I could see him struggling to find words. The confident, charismatic Jacob I knew had been replaced by someone who looked almost scared. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. "I don't know how to answer that." "Yes, you do," I said quietly. "You just don't want to." The admission hung between us like a confession, and I watched as Jacob's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. His eyes were wide, almost panicked, and I could see him processing the implications of what I'd just said. "This conversation is—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "I don't think we should be having this conversation." But we were having it, whether he wanted to or not. And despite my terror, despite the voice in my head screaming at me to back down, I couldn't stop now. We'd crossed into territory that couldn't be uncrossed, and the only way forward was through. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're afraid of the answer?" Jacob's silence was answer enough. The weight of those unspoken words hung between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. Jacob's eyes darted away from mine, his usual easy confidence crumbling as he stared at his coffee cup like it held answers he desperately needed. I watched his jaw work silently, the muscles in his neck tense with whatever internal battle he was fighting. The cafe around us seemed to fade into background noise as we sat in this bubble of charged silence, both of us knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. Jacob started, then stopped, his voice catching on something too big for words. He looked up at me finally, and I saw something raw and vulnerable in his expression that made my chest tighten. "I don't know what you want me to say, Donald. I want you to tell me the truth," I said, my own voice barely above a whisper. The courage that had carried me this far was threatening to abandon me, but I couldn't back down now. Not when we were this close to something real. All these months of you asking about my crush, teasing me about it, pushing for details. Why does it matter so much to you? Jacob's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee, and I noticed he didn't actually take a sip. "Because," he said, then stopped again, frustration flickering across his features. "Because the thought of you with someone else makes me feel like I'm losing my mind." The admission hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that I'd misunderstood, but the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. "Jacob, you want to know why I keep asking?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to match mine. "Because every time you smile that secret smile when you're thinking about whoever this person is, I feel like someone's reaching into my chest and squeezing. Because I lie awake at night wondering who gets to make you look that happy, who gets to be the reason you light up from the inside. If this story hits you, drop a heart in the comments." My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Say what?" Jacob laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That I've been going crazy watching you fall for someone else. That every time you deflect my questions, I convince myself it's because you're protecting them from me, from my jealousy." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful style he always maintained. "How do I tell my best friend that I'm in love with him without destroying everything we have?" The words hung in the air between us, raw and honest and terrifying. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally hearing what I'd been hoping for without daring to believe it was possible. "The person I have feelings for," I said, my voice shaking with the weight of what I was about to reveal. "It's complicated because I'm terrified of losing them. Because they mean everything to me. And if I tell them how I feel and they don't feel the same way? I took a shaky breath. I don't know how I'd survive that rejection. Jacob's expression shifted, hope and fear warring in his eyes. Donald, who is it? Someone who's been right in front of me this whole time, I whispered. Someone who makes me laugh until my sides hurt, who remembers how I take my coffee, who calls me when he's had a bad day because he says my voice makes everything better. I watched understanding begin to dawn on his face. Someone who's been teasing me about having a crush while being the crush himself. The silence that followed was different from before. Where earlier it had been heavy with unspoken fears, now it hummed with possibility. Jacob's eyes searched mine, and I saw the exact moment when everything clicked into place for him. Me, he breathed, the word so quiet I almost missed it. You, I confirmed, my voice barely audible. It's always been you, Jacob. Every deflection, every nervous laugh, every time I changed the subject. I was protecting you from the truth because I was terrified of losing you. Jacob's face went through a series of emotions so quickly I could barely track them. Surprise, relief, joy, and something that looked like wonder. All this time, he said, shaking his head slowly. All this time I've been driving myself crazy with jealousy over myself. Despite the intensity of the moment, I found myself smiling. Pretty much. God, we're idiots, Jacob said. But he was smiling too now, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since this conversation started. I've been so afraid of ruining our friendship that I convinced myself the teasing was just friendly curiosity. But really, I was hoping. I was hoping that maybe if I kept asking, you'd eventually tell me it was me. And I was hoping you'd stop asking before I broke down and told you, I admitted. I thought if I could just keep deflecting, maybe these feelings would go away and we could stay friends without any complications. Do you want them to go away? Jacob asked, his voice soft but serious. The feelings, I mean. Now that it's all out in the open, do you wish you didn't feel this way about me? I considered the question, really considered it. For months, I've been telling myself that these feelings were a burden, something that complicated our friendship and made everything harder. But sitting here now, seeing the hope in Jacob's eyes, feeling the weight of secrecy finally lifted from my shoulders, I realized that wasn't true at all. No, I said firmly. I don't want them to go away. I want to see where they lead us. Jacob's smile widened, and for the first time in months, it reached his eyes completely. Even if it means everything changes between us. Especially because it means everything changes between us, I replied. I'm tired of pretending, Jacob. I'm tired of hiding how I feel about you behind jokes and deflections. I want to be honest about this, about us. About what we could be if we're brave enough to try. Jacob reached across the table, his fingers finding mine and intertwining with them. The simple contact sent electricity up my arm, and I marveled at how right it felt to finally touch him with intention, with honesty about what that touch meant. I've been in love with you for so long, he said, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of my hand. I just never thought I'd be lucky enough for you to feel the same way. The weight of his words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Jacob, I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet coffee shop around us. His thumb continued its gentle pattern on my hand, and I realized that this simple touch was rewriting everything I thought I knew about us, about what was possible between two people who had been dancing around the truth for so long. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, I said, my free hand reaching up to wipe away a tear that had escaped. Every time you'd ask about my crush, every time you'd get that look in your eyes when I deflected, I thought I was just projecting my own feelings onto you. Jacob's grip on my hand tightened, and I could see the emotion building in his own eyes, the careful walls he'd built around his heart finally crumbling. You weren't imagining anything, he said, his voice thick with emotion. God, Donald, you have no idea how many times I wanted to just tell you. How many nights I lay awake thinking about what it would be like to kiss you, to hold you, to be able to call you mine. The confession hung between us like a bridge we were both finally brave enough to cross, and I felt my heart racing with the possibility of everything we could become. I lifted our joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to his knuckles, watching as his breath caught at the gesture. I love you too, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating as they left my lips. I've been so scared of losing you, of ruining what we have. that I almost let fear keep me from having everything I've ever wanted. Jacob's eyes searched mine, and I could see the moment when the last of his doubt melted away, replaced by something that looked like wonder. "We're really doing this," he said, not quite a question, but not quite a statement either. "We're really going to try. If you want to," I said, suddenly needing his reassurance, needing to know that this leap of faith was one we were taking together. "I know it changes everything between us, and I know it might be complicated, but Jacob, I can't pretend anymore. I can't keep hiding how I feel about you." He brought our joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my palm that sent shivers through my entire body. "I want to try," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I want to try so badly it scares me. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." The coffee shop around us seemed to fade away as we sat there, holding hands across the small table, finally allowing ourselves to feel the full weight of what we'd just confessed. Comment below where you're listening from. I could see other patrons going about their normal Tuesday afternoon routines, completely unaware that my entire world had just shifted on its axis. "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice soft but steady. The question felt enormous, loaded with all the possibilities that stretched out before us like an uncharted map. Jacob smiled then, the first truly unguarded smile I'd seen from him in months, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "Now we figure it out together," he said. "We take it one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one moment at a time. We learn how to be honest with each other about everything, not just the big stuff." I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over me that I hadn't experienced in months. The fear was still there, lurking at the edges of my consciousness, but it was overshadowed by something much stronger: hope, love, and the incredible relief of finally being known completely by the person who mattered most. "I love you," I said again, needing to hear the words in the space between us, needing to make them real. "I love you too," Jacob replied, and this time when he said it, there was no hesitation, no fear, just pure, honest truth. The weeks that followed felt like learning to breathe again, but this time with someone who understood the rhythm of my lungs. Jacob and I moved carefully through our new reality, mapping the territory between friendship and romance with the tenderness of cartographers charting unexplored lands. Our first official date happened on a Tuesday evening at the same coffee shop where months of careful deflection had finally crumbled into truth. But this time, when Jacob reached across the table to touch my hand, there was no pretense of accident, no need to pull away. His fingers intertwined with mine deliberately, and I felt the simple miracle of being wanted exactly as I was. "This feels different," he said, thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Good different or scary different?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way his eyes softened. "Both," he admitted, "but mostly good." We talked about boundaries and expectations, about how to honor the friendship that had brought us here while building something entirely new. Jacob confessed that he'd been practicing saying "my boyfriend" in his mirror for 3 days, and I laughed until my chest ached with joy. The transition wasn't seamless. There were moments of awkwardness when old habits collided with new intentions, times when we caught ourselves holding back affection we were now free to give. But each small adjustment felt like a victory, each shared glance a celebration of honesty chosen over safety. 3 months later, as we planned our first weekend getaway together, I realized that the exhaustion of hiding had been replaced by the exhilaration of being known. Jacob still teased me, but now his jokes were punctuated with kisses, his laughter followed by whispered declarations of love. "Remember when you asked if it bothered me that you had a crush?" he said one evening, pulling me close on his couch. "How could I forget? Best question you ever asked," he murmured against my temple. "Even if it took me forever to answer." I smiled, finally understanding that sometimes the most important conversations begin with the courage to ask what we're afraid to know.